Welcome to Joy in Our Town. I'm your host, Vanessa Rose. So happy you decided to tune in and join us for another great edition today. We are joined today by Michael W. Smith, and he is a Christian counselor at House of Healing here in Phoenix. Thank you so much for joining us today, Michael.
Great to be back.
It's always so good to have you on. I know that our viewing audience always loves what you have to share.
I hope so.
You've been doing this for a while.
Yes.
You've seen a few people.
Yep.
Helped solve a few problems.
Hundreds.
Hundreds, thousands, countless ones, but who's counting, right?
No, I'm not.
You're not. So God knows though, right? But anyways, thank you so much for taking time away from your practice today and to be here with us and to share with our audience.
Thank you.
But for anyone who's watching and hasn't seen you on here before, tell us just a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, I've been a counselor here in Phoenix for 32 years, and I do a wide range of counseling services. Family counseling, marriage counseling, individual counseling. I do counseling, behavioral counseling, and cognitive therapy, depending on the situation. And today I think our subject is families. I do a lot of family counseling, individual and group.
Wonderful. So you see everybody almost.
Yes.
You deal with a large array of people and of issues and things that are happening in people's lives.
Yeah, including SMIs, or the seriously mentally ill. Also have a program for that.
I'm sure that you would probably agree, though, more than anyone, everybody has stuff in their life, regardless of who they are.
Yeah, it's called humans.
It's called humans, right? And I think sometimes people hear therapy and they probably get a little bit scared, thinking, yes, I don't need a therapist, I'm not crazy. But I think that everyone deals with things in their life and has trauma and has problems that they've experienced. So
I usually use the word counseling. It's got a little bit less of a
of a connotation with it. Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you again for being here, and thank you so much at home for watching. Today we are discussing family, and our first topic is relationship communication. That's one, I think those two words together, that means a lot. Communication especially, though. And whenever you're talking to a family and it has to do with communication, you actually give me a list here of the top 5 issues that counselors face in relationship counseling. And before we get into that, though, in depth, what to you is communication and what should it be?
Well, the communication portion is mostly related to families, and that's where it's the most important thing. For everything, child rearing from A to Z, the key to it is communication. And when that communication starts to break down or fall apart, then eventually the family itself breaks down and falls apart. So my initial focus on the family when they come in is what kind of behavior patterns they've established between the parents and between the kids, and it usually starts with the parents. That's my first focus with the family, is the parents. Even if one of the children are malfunctioning really bad, I still start with the parents, because normally the problem started there and even before that.
So whenever you say with the parents, of course, there could be individual issues there, but you're probably more relating to the way that they communicate together, and so the way they communicate with their children.
Yes.
So what would one of the major problems be then? The ability to communicate consistently, maybe, from parents to children?
That's kind of the result of it, but believe it or not, if you look at the parents and their background and how they communicate and how they communicated when they were young, and how they communicated when they were first married and first became parents, you can pick up a lot of information from that part of their lives, which is related to the problems they're currently having. A lot of people are hurt or wounded or fearful in childhood, and they use maladaptive communication skills based on their emotions and false beliefs and unrealistic fears. And that usually plays out when they have a family and the family unit. Those kind of things from their childhood can also fall on their children.
And I think that's something people have probably heard at some point in their life, that they only love the way that they know how to love, or they only are loved the way they know how to be loved.
Yes.
And so that goes back to their own interpersonal workings and issues and things that they've experienced from their life.
Correct.
So is it fair to say then that people need to be understanding of people and maybe try to help them and not accept abuse from them, but understand that those issues are there because of the things they've experienced in their life.
Yes, in fact, the most important person to understand is the person themselves, because a lot of people have maladaptive behaviors and don't understand what the cause of it or the root of it is.
They may not even know that they have them.
They may not even know that they have them.
They think they're normal.
That's correct.
I think we all think we're normal. I think that you have to come to that realization that we all have our quirks and our imbalances, and none of us are perfect.
That's a relative term, normal. But in marriage counseling and family counseling, what you're looking at is the maladaptive behaviors, the pain that behavior is causing, and then I try to find the root of it. And sometimes it pre-exists the family.
Okay, and so these top 5 issues that counselors face in relationship counseling, I thought maybe we could go through them. First one is how to communicate effectively.
Now that one is a textbook one from childhood, from their parents. You just illustrated it. It comes down through the family tree. And people that don't learn good communication skills as a child or as a young adult while they're at their home, and they'll pick up maladaptive behaviors from the parents, emotional responses, anger, frustration, negativity, and that they'll carry over into their own family unless they're made aware of it and make adjustments to correct it. That's usually the root of that.
So if people do have these issues that carry over, how do they learn to communicate effectively?
Well, it depends on the client, but there's different levels of cognitive and behavioral therapy. But also in my counseling practice, I also use spirituality, because the American Psychological Association had a couple of studies on that concept in therapy and counseling and treatment in 2007 and 2010. And both studies showed that if you include spirituality in with the counseling and therapy process, they showed statistically the results were better, and there was a greater level of improvement. So I have to be sure that I'm including that in the family unit and each individual person, if I can, or if they have it. Okay? You can do counseling, obviously, on atheists and agnostics, but usually most people, the vast majority of them, have some component of spirituality, and that usually helps.
Okay, very interesting. And so number 2 is getting a second chance and reconnecting.
Yes. Now that's also an ancient behavioral issue with the person. How the person grows up and their original early relationships on how to forgive and how to hold grudges and how to use the maladaptive behavior of the other person, it all relates to the current relationship, how they relate with their current spouse. And so if that process doesn't work properly, that's going to feed over to what I'm dealing with now. So a lot of times I'll go back in time and start from there and work forward. Because a lot of parents teach their children to hurt other people, and they don't understand they're doing it. They don't know how they're doing it. And the interpersonal relationship goes down.
So they're not able then to learn how to connect with someone because
Correct.
they don't learn it from a young age.
Exactly. They have to kind of be retrained, and that's where the cognitive behavioral therapy comes in, and you take each step along the way with each individual person. If they're having specific behaviors that are causing extreme problems, those are kind of handled on like an emergency room basis. But the long-term problems, how the person communicates emotionally and mentally, you're going to have to take it literally almost like baby steps.
So here's one that doesn't necessarily have to do with the way that a family raised you, but with this generation coming up in a digital age and their ability to connect with other human beings on an interpersonal level.
Yes.
Have you seen at all the negative effects of that and the ability to connect with people human to human without technology involved in there?
It's chronic. It's a chronic problem. Nowadays, people used to, what you would learn, a slang term, check out. Somebody comes home from work and they're exhausted, so they kind of check out on television. When you have people that have emotional and mental problems, they like to check out almost constantly, and now they're doing it with handheld technical devices where they're always checking out into this other world. The more they do that, particularly at home, the bigger the gulf develops between the parents and the children and between the siblings. It almost turns into a computer module.
Wow.
That is a major problem now, and that's something I deal with in counseling all the time. That has to be fixed.
How can families fix that? I mean, that's because, especially social media, I think we're all guilty of it. Everybody has it on their cell phones. You're always plugged in. And I know I've caught myself saying, oh my gosh, I need to stop this.
Yes.
I'm sitting having coffee with somebody. I don't need to be looking at my Facebook account. This needs to be put away. And I catch myself, but a lot of people don't. How do families, how can they help their children or their significant other realize that there's a problem there?
Well, that's the crux of it. You have to get the mother or the father or the kids to realize how damaging that is for the other person, because it's impersonal. What you're really saying, if you're texting, if I was texting right now, what I would really be saying, I'm not that interested in you or this interview, and I'm really bored here, and I really need something else better than you. And that's how people receive it emotionally.
Wow.
And that causes...
I see people on dates all the time doing that.
Okay,
I'll see a man and a woman at a date, and both of them will be like this, and I just think to myself, and I scratch my head, and that's interesting.
No, it's more than interesting. That relationship's ruined. You know, there's already wounds there. There's already problems there. This is a red flag that something's wrong.
But you can come back from there.
You can, yeah. That has to be changed, and that's how you do it in cognitive therapy. They have to learn productive methods of to stop doing that. Then they have to replace it with personal methods.
And the ability to build personal relationships without that. And,
exactly.
And I think that is becoming an epidemic today, especially seeing the way young people communicate, this upcoming generation, the way they speak, everything. I think it's a challenge we're going to face as a society as it continues to grow and these young people continue to get older.
Oh, there's no question about it. Almost everybody has a handheld unit in high school. Almost every kid.
And so to get back, because I want to cover all 5 of these issues, we'll have a little less time, but how to get the spouse to change?
Now, that's now we're getting into the nitty-gritty of the difficulties. The spousal behaviors in our society is much worse now because you have blended families and multiple spouses. It's very common now to have people with 2 and 3 and 4 marriages. Not 4 so much, but definitely 3. And what happens is, to use a slang term, people carry their behavioral and attitudinal baggage from that one to this one. So in the counseling process, what I have to do is I have to go back in time and see what types of relationships this person has, because how they're behaving now is directly affected with how bad that marriage was, how verbally abusive that one was this one physically abusive, was there sexual abuse, and how that played out there affects what I'm doing here.
That I could see would lead to a lot of problems, because you're treating your current partner because of the way that 1 or 2 partners ago was.
Right, exactly.
Why do you not trust me? I can just see how that would end up going down in a relationship then.
Well, it's easy to see. I mean, if you can't trust your current spouse.
It's easy to see from the outside in, I'm sure.
Yeah, but not from the inside out. Good point. So if you've had two spouses that have been cheaters, so to speak, and infidelity is the #1 divorce issue, mixed with porn. Now porn is.
Wow.
Infidelity, if you've had that in your past, the person is naturally going to be, from an emotional standpoint, predisposed to being suspicious. And that suspicion is going to lead to negative behavior and poor communication with the current spouse, #3 or #4.
Wow, wow. We could go on for that for another 20 minutes, but I wanted to get to these last 2 really quickly. So this kind of covers that, but how to get over the past?
Now, that's a mechanism of the last one. How a person forgives and how they're raised and taught to forgive and how they're taught to hold grudges directly comes usually from when they're young. Usually. Okay? And in the behavioral counseling process, you have to teach the person, as a counselor, new methods of changing and forgiving. And the only way to do that is get the person to see the big picture of their behavior, what they did wrong, and the other spouse. They have to understand that there's a root behind not being able to forgive. There's something causing it. Forgiveness isn't something you just, I forgive you. Mentally, you can do that, but it doesn't occur here.
Emotionally in your
Correct.
heart. And that's the last one, is how to forgive and be forgiven. And that's something I think we could have you come back another time and just go over that. I think that's something that everyone
It's crucial.
it's crucial in your life, is to learn how to forgive. And
Yes.
I'm sure in a family and in a communicational setting, that's probably the number one, I would think, the number one issue,
It's
at least.
close.
Because it's pretty close there to
Very.
being able to get over the past. You
Yeah.
have to be able to forgive
Oh,
and
yes.
to open up the communication today. But thank you so much, Michael. So much great
It's been my
information.
pleasure.
We always have too much to talk about, if that's possible. So thank you, and thank you so much at home. We'll be right back after this short message.
Getting out of the military, I was missing this camaraderie.
It's frustrating when you try and talk to people that don't understand.
I still had the anger, I still had the addictions, but we didn't talk about that.
Came to a point where it's like, okay, I really need to talk to somebody about this.
Family more or less encouraged me, go to the VA.
It's okay to go get help. It's okay to talk to people, because it takes true strength to ask for help.
Hear veterans' real stories of strength and recovery at maketheconnection.net.
Hello and welcome back to Joy in Our Town. I'm your host, Vanessa Rose. Thank you so much for staying with us. If you just happen to be joining us today, we are joined by Michael W. Smith. He is a Christian counselor at the House of Healing here in Phoenix, Arizona. Thank you so much for staying with us today, Michael.
Thank you.
Such a pleasure to have you. Always so much wonderful information from you. And so today we are speaking about family, and our second topic is anxiety and stress disorders and treatments. I have a feeling this is another one we could cover for about 2 hours. But I'm not sure if you know the statistics, but I know I don't. I know I've read them before, but anxiety and stress, it affects a big portion of America today.
Very, very large. What happened is, here in America, things have gotten bad in that area with 9/11 and then the 2008 stock market and housing crash. We've seen a dramatic spike in people developing anxiety disorders. And one of the most difficult things for people to face is uncertainty about their future.
Wow.
People by nature want to feel loved, secure, safe, stable. And because of the economic crash we've had, that has caused a real spike in anxiety disorders.
And so what is the physiological process of anxiety?
Well, physiologically, it's controlled in the brain. There's two glands in your brain. It's the back of the frontal lobe in the middle. They're called the amygdala glands. And these are the glands that process stress and fear in the person. The sensations of their environment come through their five senses, and by the time it gets to the amygdala gland in your brain, that's the gland that determines whether you're going to fight or flight, so to speak. Okay? And once that gland is damaged or malfunctions, the person starts developing abnormal stress-related disorders. The textbook example is post-traumatic stress syndrome. The amygdala gland is damaged because of a series of severe stressful situations. Another example is severe child abuse. That can cause damage to it. And what happens is the amygdala gland, if it's malfunctioning, the person has abnormally high levels of fear many times over something that's not that serious, which leads to another area of anxieties that are growing fairly fast, phobias.
So somebody that's considered a worrywart, is that the same thing? Somebody who's consistently worrying and stressed about things? Or is that different? That could be.
It could be, but not necessarily.
Okay.
Worrywarts tend to have a obsessive compulsive thought process where they kind of, through a series of bad events and disappointments and heartaches and so on from childhood on, their mind starts to naturally flow to something negative. But that doesn't mean they have an anxiety disorder. When it's compulsive and uncontrollable is when the disorder kicks in. Their mind just naturally goes to something negative and they can't stop it. Like
How
an obsessive
interesting.
thought disorder. And that's usually comes about from a pattern of disappointments, fear incidents, childhood pain, rejection, abandonment can trigger that.
So what are the most popular types of anxiety disorders?
Well, the one is called GAD. That's a generalized anxiety disorder. That one has spiked since 2008 when the economy hit. It's a generalized feeling that the person has of chronic anxiety. They come in for counseling and they can't put their finger on what's causing it. Another one that's spiked recently is panic disorders. And those are situations where the amygdala glands misfires in your brain and the person is suddenly panicking over something that normally a normal person without that illness would never panic over. It's an abnormal rush. And physically, because of the glands in your brain, physically the person starts sweating, they have strange body odors, they have pains in their stomach, tightness in their chest.
Wow.
Physiologically, they start manifesting this fear from this gland that's malfunctioning. But
And mostly for no reason.
in phobia cases, it's for no reason. For example, fear of heights, fear of dark, fear of closed places, fear of people. One of them is social anxiety disorder. People are afraid of strangers. They don't like crowds. They don't like to be around places where they don't have someone right there. It's kind of a generalized anxiety situation, and it's caused by bad fear incidents in the past, trauma incidents in childhood, rejection or abandonment in childhood. That's how it kind of starts. And then as the person grows up and yields over to that, not knowing how to handle it or how to properly manage it mentally or emotionally, it blows up.
Wow. And then there's PTSD, OCD, SAD, and PD. Goodness.
Yes. Yeah, the panic disorder is going up.
Okay.
PTSD is the extreme end of it. And for example, from our military, we're having record numbers of people coming back from service now who have PTSD. And it's leading to record numbers of suicides.
I've seen that. That's really sad.
In 2013, they had more soldiers commit suicide than they had killed in combat. And that's the first time in history that's ever happened. It's going to repeat again in 2014. But it's all based on severe situational trauma, and combat's the worst trauma you can have, basically. Combat's it. And the amygdala gland starts to malfunction because the system is overloaded. And after that, it starts to fire on its own. So they're trying to get all these soldiers into counseling and therapy right away, and they're trying to get them on medication right away to slow down the misfire in the brain, because if it gets out of control, it's leading to the worst thing in the world.
Suicide. How sad. I've read many articles. I know that's a major problem, and I'm happy to hear they're trying to do something about it, because that's terrible that we're losing so many servicemen and women because of PTSD.
Well, just one quick thought on that. A recent study just came out from Duke University in Durham, and they worked with the Veterans Administration Hospital, and they were doing MRIs on these glands in the soldiers' brains, and they found that patients are more susceptible to get PTSD if they have smaller amygdala glands in their brain, if they're small, which means they're not able to take the stress and they don't function properly under stress.
Wow.
And
so people can be predispositioned to it in a way.
Correct.
Then.
Exactly.
Wow. So that's something they can probably eventually avoid with testing. But we just have a few minutes here, and so I wanted to cover what the symptoms of an anxiety disorder are. What are some of the symptoms that people should look for?
What they should look for is physical and emotional changes in the person to catch it before the thing becomes a full-blown disorder. And some of them were, we mentioned earlier, pains in the stomach, tightness in the chest, sweaty palms, twitching, tics. Your body is going to process the stress, and if it's doing it inappropriately, it comes out physiologically and emotionally.
How about sleep?
Sleep disorders, sleep deprivation, an increase in bad dreams, an increase in nightmares, all little red flags that the person is not processing their stress properly.
Because I know sleep is, I just was speaking to someone earlier, and they mentioned that 1 in 6 people have some sort of sleep disorder.
Yeah, it's related to stress.
I'm sure that has a lot to do with stress and with anxiety and
Correct.
worrying.
Yes.
Because whenever you lay down at night, your brain probably starts
Racing.
Racing.
And that goes back to the earlier comment I made. Some people reach a point where they have obsessive thinking patterns, and it manifests usually when they lay down and their body tries to relax, then it takes off.
How does, just about a minute here, but how does anxiety and stress affect relationships and families?
Normally, it's one of the main factors in the family breaking up and causing other mental and emotional problems. But stress is curable. There are counseling techniques you can use to help people manage their stress properly. They have to have a lifestyle change. They need an attitudinal change, and sometimes they just need education.
And probably the biggest part of it, more than anything, is being aware of it and accepting it and knowing that there's a problem there.
Being aware of it, and then statistically, by the way, most people that have spirituality included in their lives and in this treatment process, they get better quicker.
Very interesting, because it's a whole body, mind, spirit. It's a whole equation that makes this up, not just a body, not just a mind. It's everything put together.
True.
So wonderful. Well, Michael, you always have such great information. You're just a book of knowledge. Love having you here. Thank you so much for taking your time to be here today. Thank you at home for watching Joy in Our Town. We wouldn't be here if it weren't for you. We appreciate you, and we hope that you go and have a blessed day. Spend time with your family, and we'll see you here next time on Joy in Our Town.
This program has been sponsored by the Trinity Broadcasting Network and is made possible by your telethon dollars. Your continual support can keep Joy in Our Town coming to your home every week. Write to Joy in Our Town, Post Office Box A, Santa Ana, California, 92711.